The hospital corridor smelled like antiseptic and fear. My wife Lena was in labor and I was rushing through the hallways, my heart pounding with nervous excitement. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Our first child, a new beginning. A nurse stopped me at the delivery room door, smiling warmly. "Congratulations, your brother's already inside with her." I froze mid-step. My brother, Ryan. Why would Ryan be in the delivery room before me? Confused, I pushed through the door. There he was, standing beside Lena's bed, cradling my newborn son in his arms. But something was wrong. The way he held the baby wasn't how an uncle holds his nephew. It was intimate, possessive, like he belonged there. Lena wouldn't look at me. The nurse walked over, checking her clipboard cheerfully. "Congratulations, Uncle Ryan. Oh wait, you're the father, right?" Time stopped. The words echoed in my ears like gunshots. Ryan looked at me and I saw it in his eyes. That same expression I'd seen once before, 10 years ago, with my first wife. I couldn't breathe. My legs felt weak, like they might give out beneath me. I demanded a DNA test immediately, my voice shaking with rage and disbelief. Lena started crying, begging me to calm down, saying it was all a terrible misunderstanding. Ryan put on his innocent face, acting offended that I would even suggest such a thing. "Brother, you're being paranoid," he said smoothly, like he was the victim here. But I knew. Deep in my gut, in that sick, twisting feeling in my stomach, I knew. The hospital processed the test quickly. 3 days that felt like 3 years. 3 days of sleeping in the guest room, of staring at the ceiling, of replaying every moment of the past year in my mind. When the envelope finally arrived, my hands trembled so badly I could barely tear it open. The technical language blurred together until one number stood out with brutal clarity: 99.9% probability of paternity. Match. Ryan. Not me. Him. Again. I collapsed onto the couch, the paper slipping from my fingers. Lena stood in the doorway, mascara running down her face. Ryan was nowhere to be found. The nurse's words haunted me. "This isn't the first time this has happened, is it?" I needed to go back. Back to where this nightmare first began. 10 years earlier, my life was completely different. I was 24, newly married to Sophie, my college sweetheart. We'd met in a psychology class, bonded over terrible cafeteria coffee and late-night study sessions. Our apartment was small but filled with love, laughter, and dreams of the future. Ryan was my best man at our wedding. He stood beside me, gave a toast that made everyone cry, talked about brotherhood and loyalty and always being there for each other. I believed every single word. Why wouldn't I? He was my brother. The first year of marriage was perfect. Sophie and I talked about starting a family, buying a house, building a life together. Then small things started changing. Sophie became distant, always on her phone, smiling at messages she quickly deleted when I entered the room. One night I woke up thirsty and accidentally grabbed her phone instead of mine from the nightstand. It lit up with a text from someone saved simply as R. My heart started pounding. The message read, "He's asleep. I miss you already." I stared at those words until they burned into my brain. My hands shook as I scrolled through Sophie's phone. Months of messages, hundreds of them. Late-night calls lasting hours, plans to meet when I was at work, and photos. So many photos of them together, at restaurants I'd never been to, in hotel rooms I didn't recognize. Intimate moments that belonged to a husband and wife, except I wasn't the husband in these pictures. I confronted Sophie the next morning. She didn't even try to deny it. She just cried, mascara streaming down her face, saying it just happened. Like betrayal was some kind of accident, like sleeping with my brother was something that simply occurred without choice or consequence. Then Ryan walked into our apartment. He had a key. Of course he had a key. I'd given it to him for emergencies. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed that I'd discovered their secret. "It's not that serious," he said with a shrug. "Not that serious. My wife, my brother, my home." Everything I'd built was crumbling, and he acted like I'd discovered a minor inconvenience. Then Sophie whispered the words that shattered me completely. "I'm pregnant." The room tilted. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what was happening. We'd been trying for months with no success, and now, suddenly, she was pregnant. I demanded a DNA test. Sophie cried. Ryan rolled his eyes. But the results were undeniable. The baby wasn't mine. It was Ryan's. When our parents found out, I expected support, understanding, maybe even outrage on my behalf. Instead, they sided with Ryan. "These things happen," my father said, like my brother sleeping with my wife was just an unfortunate accident. "You need to move on and forgive." My mother hugged Ryan at the next family dinner while I sat in my car outside, unable to walk through the door. They chose him. They always chose him. Ryan was the golden child, charming, successful, magnetic. I was the steady one, the dependable one, the one who didn't cause problems. So when problems arose, I was expected to be the bigger person, to forgive, to move on. I couldn't do it. I packed my belongings, quit my job, and moved 3 hours away to a new city where nobody knew me or my shame. For 5 years, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. Therapy, new job, new apartment, new routines that didn't include family or trust or hope for reconciliation. Then one day, my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "I've changed. Let's put the past behind us." I stared at those words for hours, wanting desperately to believe that people could change, that brothers could be brothers again. Against every instinct, I replied, "Okay." Ryan invited me to dinner at an expensive restaurant downtown. He looked different, successful, polished, confident. He told me he owned a construction company now. Business was booming. He apologized for everything, said he'd been young and stupid, that he regretted hurting me deeply. I wanted to believe him so badly. He talked about family, about how blood should matter more than mistakes, about second chances and healing. Then he said something that changed everything. "There's someone I want you to meet. Her name's Lena. She's incredible and I think you two would really connect." A week later, Ryan introduced us at a coffee shop downtown. Lena was beautiful, dark hair, warm smile, intelligent eyes that actually listened when I spoke. She made me laugh for the first time in years. We talked for 3 hours while Ryan sat back, watching us with a proud smile, like a matchmaker who'd done something wonderful. I didn't see the trap, I only saw hope. A second chance at love, at happiness, at trusting someone again. Lena and I exchanged numbers, and when I left that coffee shop, I felt lighter than I had in years. Maybe Ryan really had changed. Maybe life was finally giving me something good. Lena and I started dating. It felt pure, genuine, like the universe was finally balancing the scales. She knew about Sophie, about the betrayal, and she promised she would never hurt me like that. We took things slowly. I was cautious, still carrying scars from my first marriage. But Lena was patient, understanding, everything Sophie hadn't been. Ryan encouraged our relationship at every step. He hosted dinners at his house, gave me relationship advice, even offered to help plan our wedding when I proposed a year later. I fell completely in love with Lena. She was my second chance, my proof that not everyone would betray me. Our wedding was small and beautiful. Ryan stood beside me as my best man again. He gave another heartfelt speech about brotherhood, second chances, and the power of forgiveness. Everyone cried, including me. Looking back now with the clarity of hindsight, I see how perfectly orchestrated it all was. The same role, the same position of trust, the same emotional manipulation. History wasn't repeating by accident. Ryan was conducting it like a symphony. But I was blind, desperate to believe that my brother loved me, that my new wife was different, that lightning couldn't possibly strike the same place twice. I was wrong. The first year of our marriage was wonderful. Then, slowly, things started feeling familiar in the worst possible way. Lena began laughing too hard at Ryan's jokes. She texted constantly, turning her phone face down whenever I entered the room. Small things that individually meant nothing but together painted a disturbing picture. One evening, Lena told me she was meeting friends for dinner downtown. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But later that night, I drove past our house on my way home from the gym and saw Ryan's truck parked in our driveway. My heart stopped. I sat in my car for an hour, watching, waiting, trying to convince myself there was an innocent explanation. When I finally walked inside, they were sitting on the couch together, talking quietly. Nothing physical, just talking. But the way they looked at each other, the way they stopped mid-sentence when I walked in, the way the air felt thick with secrets, told me everything I needed to know. Ryan was just checking on me, Lena said quickly, her voice too bright, too eager to explain. I wasn't feeling well earlier. Ryan stood up, nodding. Yeah, just being a good brother-in-law, making sure she's okay while you were out. But I wasn't out. I was supposed to be at the gym. They thought I wouldn't be home for another hour. That's when I knew. Deep down, I knew. I didn't confront them, not yet. Instead, I did something I'd never thought I'd do. I installed a small security camera in our living room, hidden behind a row of books on the shelf. I hated myself for it. It felt like paranoia, like I was the crazy one, but I needed proof. I needed to know if I was imagining things or if history was repeating itself in the cruelest possible way. For 3 days, nothing happened on camera. Normal conversations, brief visits. Then on the fourth day, while I was at work, I checked the live feed on my phone during my lunch break. Ryan was there, alone with Lena. They sat close on the couch, whispering. I couldn't hear the audio clearly, but I saw Ryan's hand on her knee. I saw her lean into him. Then I heard Ryan say something that made my blood run cold. You know how it started with Sophie. History repeats. Lena laughed nervously. He can't find out, not yet. I saved the footage immediately. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I sat in my office for the rest of the day, staring at the wall, trying to decide what to do. Confront them, leave quietly, gather more evidence. I chose to wait, to watch, to be absolutely certain before I destroyed everything a second time. 2 months later, Lena told me she was pregnant. I should have been overjoyed. Instead, I felt physically sick. Ryan came over that evening to celebrate. He hugged Lena too long, avoided my eyes completely, and left after just 20 minutes, claiming he had work to do. That night, I lay awake beside Lena, staring at the ceiling, doing math in my head. We'd been intimate less frequently in recent months. She'd complained of headaches, stress, exhaustion. But the timeline matched perfectly with when Ryan had been visiting more often, when I'd been working late on a big project, when they'd had opportunity and privacy. I wanted to be wrong, desperately, painfully wrong. Then my phone buzzed with a text notification. I glanced at the screen. It was from Ryan, but the message didn't make sense. He still doesn't know, we're almost there. I stared at those words, my heart pounding. It was clearly meant for Lena, sent to me by mistake. Almost where? Almost to the birth, when the truth would be undeniable. Almost to the point where I'd be legally and emotionally trapped. I took a screenshot and saved it with the rest of my evidence. The camera footage, the suspicious texts, the timeline that told a story I didn't want to believe but couldn't ignore. 9 months later, Lena went into labor. I drove her to the hospital, holding her hand, pretending everything was normal. But when I walked into that delivery room and saw Ryan already there, holding my son like he was his own, something inside me finally shattered. I confronted them both, demanded the DNA test that would prove what I already knew. Lena sobbed, saying I was ruining everything. Ryan denied it all, calling me paranoid and unstable, but the test didn't lie. 99.9% matched to Ryan. The baby was his, again, different woman, same betrayal, 2 wives, 2 children, both mine by marriage, both his by blood. I walked out of that hospital room and kept walking. I didn't stop until I reached my car. Then I sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, and screamed until my throat was raw. Lena called me hundreds of times over the next few days. Ryan showed up at my apartment, banging on the door, yelling about how I was overreacting, how we could work through this like family. Our parents called, begging me to be reasonable, to think about what's best for everyone. But I was done. Done with forgiveness. Done with family. Done with being the fool who believed in second chances. This time I wasn't going to disappear. This time I was going to make them pay. The first few weeks after leaving Lena were the darkest of my entire life. I stopped eating properly, stopped sleeping more than a few hours a night, stopped caring about anything except the pain that consumed me. I went to work, came home, and drank until I passed out. Some nights I cried. Most nights I just stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every warning sign I'd ignored. Then one evening my father showed up at my apartment unannounced. He looked older than I remembered, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "Ryan's in trouble." I almost laughed. Ryan was in trouble, After everything he'd done, after destroying my life twice, he was in trouble. My father sat down heavily on my couch and told me something I'd never known. When our grandfather died 6 years ago, he'd left an inheritance to be split equally between Ryan and me. $200,000 each, but I'd never seen a penny. My father had just discovered why. Ryan had forged my signature on the legal documents and taken my entire share to fund his construction company. "I'm sorry," my father said, his voice breaking. "I should have believed you about Sophie, about everything." I stared at him, feeling something shift deep inside me. Not forgiveness, something colder, something sharper, something that tasted like revenge. I spent the next week gathering evidence. Bank statements, inheritance documents, legal records. Everything my father gave me, plus everything I could find online. Ryan had stolen $200,000 from me. Money that was legally, rightfully mine. Money he'd used to build his perfect life while I suffered in poverty and shame. I contacted a lawyer named Ms. Harper who specialized in fraud and inheritance disputes. She reviewed all my documents carefully, her expression growing more serious with each page. "You have an excellent case," she said finally. "We can bury him with this." But I didn't want a quick lawsuit. I didn't want simple justice. I wanted something bigger, something more complete, something that would destroy Ryan the way he destroyed me. Twice. So I started planning, not with anger but with cold, calculated precision. I would take everything from him, his business, his reputation, his freedom, his pride, and he wouldn't see it coming until it was far too late to stop me. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror that night and whispered to my reflection, "You wanted everything of mine, Ryan. Fine, keep it, until I take it all back." For the first time in months, I smiled. I called Ryan the next day. My voice was calm, measured, defeated. "I've been thinking," I said. "Maybe I overreacted. Maybe we can move past this." Ryan sounded relieved, almost giddy. "I knew you'd come around, brother. Family is everything." He invited me to work at his construction company, said he needed someone he could trust, someone who understood loyalty. The irony was almost funny. I accepted the position and started the following week. I played my role perfectly. The broken brother trying to rebuild, the loyal employee grateful for a second chance. Ryan believed every moment of it. Narcissists always do. They can't imagine that the people they've destroyed might be capable of destroying them back. I worked late nights, came in early, volunteered for every project. And slowly, carefully, I gained access to everything. His computer files, his email accounts, his financial records, his client communications. What I discovered was even worse than I'd imagined. Ryan wasn't just a cheater and a thief. He was a criminal. Fake invoices to inflate costs, offshore accounts to hide money, tax evasion schemes, fraudulent contracts with city officials who looked the other way for cash payments. His empire was built on lies, manipulation, and illegal deals. I copied everything onto an encrypted external drive. Every document, every email, every shady transaction. Evidence that could send him to prison. I needed help. Someone inside the company who hated Ryan as much as I did. I found her in Maya, Ryan's executive assistant. She was brilliant, efficient, professional, and utterly disgusted by Ryan's arrogance and treatment of employees. One afternoon, I casually mentioned over coffee how Ryan had wronged me personally. Maya leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He's wronged a lot of people, more than you know." She became my inside source, my eyes and ears when I couldn't be there. Maya had access to everything: Ryan's schedule, his private meetings, his personal emails, his confidential phone calls. She fed me information almost daily, motivated by her own sense of justice and years of watching Ryan mistreat people without consequences. "He's cheating on Lena," Maya told me one afternoon, her expression disgusted. "There's another woman, someone he met at a construction conference last month." I wasn't surprised. Betrayal was Ryan's specialty, his pattern. His addiction. Maya and I worked together for months, building an airtight case against him. Every piece of evidence was documented, verified, backed up in multiple locations. We were building something bigger than revenge. We were building justice. "When this is over," Maya said quietly, "I want to watch his face when he realizes he's lost everything." The evidence kept piling up: tax fraud, contract manipulation, bribery of city inspectors, false billing schemes. Ryan had been cutting corners on construction projects, using substandard materials, paying off inspectors to approve buildings that weren't safe. He'd scammed dozens of clients out of millions of dollars. People trusted him, and he'd betrayed every single one. But the final piece of evidence came from Maya one Tuesday afternoon. She handed me a folder with trembling hands. "You need to see this," she whispered. Inside was a document I'd never expected, a forged will from our grandfather. After his death, Ryan had created a fake version of the will, removing my name entirely and giving himself the complete inheritance. My father had never known because Ryan had handled all the legal paperwork himself, forging signatures, bribing a crooked lawyer, creating an entire false trail of documents. "This is felony forgery," Maya said, her voice filled with anger. "Combined with everything else, this could put him away for years." I held the document carefully, feeling its weight. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about exposing Ryan for the monster he truly was. I saved the document with the rest of my evidence and began planning the final move. Something public, something devastating, something that would destroy him completely and permanently. Ryan announced a company anniversary gala. 5 years of success, he proclaimed proudly. 5 years of building something great. He invited everyone: investors, clients, city officials, business partners, employees, family. It was going to be a massive celebration of his achievements, his vision, his empire. It was perfect. I volunteered immediately to help organize the event. Ryan, trusting me completely now, put me in charge of all the technical aspects: sound system, lighting, projector setup, slideshow presentation. He had absolutely no idea what I was preparing. I spent 3 weeks creating a presentation that looked completely normal on the surface. Photos of completed projects, testimonials from satisfied clients, inspirational quotes about hard work and integrity. But hidden within that slideshow, timed to appear during Ryan's speech, were slides I'd created myself. Screenshots of fraudulent invoices with highlighted discrepancies. Emails discussing bribe payments to city inspectors. Bank statements showing offshore accounts. Text messages between Ryan and Lena from before their affair became physical. Photos of Ryan with Sophie from 10 years ago. And the final slide, simple white text on a black background: "He stole his brother's life, twice." Maya reviewed everything the night before, her eyes wide. "This is perfect," she whispered. "This will destroy him." The night of the gala, I was completely calm, eerily calm. I knew exactly what was about to happen. The ballroom was packed with over 200 people. Ryan stood on stage in an expensive custom suit, looking like the successful businessman he pretended to be. He gave his signature charm speech, talking about hard work, family values, integrity, loyalty, building something meaningful. People applauded enthusiastically. Some even stood. He was magnetic, charismatic, the golden child who could do no wrong. I stood in the back of the room, holding the remote control, my finger hovering over the button that would change everything. Then, halfway through Ryan's speech, right as he was talking about the importance of trust in business relationships, I pressed play. The slideshow transitioned smoothly from a photo of a completed building to the first piece of evidence: a fake invoice showing inflated material costs. People looked confused. Then came more slides, flashing faster: shady emails, offshore bank accounts, bribe payments documented in Ryan's own handwriting. Gasps began rippling through the crowd. Ryan stopped mid-sentence, his face draining of all color as he turned to look at the screen behind him. Then came the personal betrayals: text messages between him and Lena, photos of him with Sophie, side-by-side timelines showing how he destroyed both my marriages. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Phones came out, people started recording. The final slide appeared, those words burning into everyone's consciousness: "He stole his brother's life, twice." Ryan's eyes found mine across the ballroom. For the first time in his life, he looked absolutely terrified. Ryan lunged off the stage, shoving through the crowd, screaming that I'd doctored everything, that I was lying, that this was all fake. Security guards grabbed him before he could reach me. He fought against them, his perfectly styled hair falling into his face, his expensive suit jacket tearing at the shoulder. Cameras flashed everywhere. Every phone in the room was recording, capturing his meltdown in high definition. He looked unhinged, desperate, nothing like the polished businessman who'd been giving a speech minutes earlier. I stood perfectly still, watching him fall apart, feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just cold, quiet emptiness. By the next morning, the video had spread everywhere. Social media, local news, business websites. Headlines screamed. Local CEO exposed by brother in scandal at company gala, and construction company owner's secret life revealed in viral video. Within 48 hours, the consequences began. The IRS announced an investigation into Ryan's company finances. Major clients pulled their contracts, citing ethical concerns and potential legal liability. Investors demanded emergency meetings and refunds. The city suspended all of Ryan's current construction projects pending safety inspections. His empire, built over 5 years on lies and betrayal, began crumbling in real time. And I watched it all happen from a distance, finally understanding what justice felt like. The fraud case moved forward quickly. Federal investigators contacted me within days, wanting copies of all my evidence. I gave them everything: the encrypted drive, the forged will, Maya's testimonies, financial records going back years. The case was overwhelming. Ryan hired 3 different lawyers, but there was no defense against the mountain of documentation Maya and I had compiled. His construction company declared bankruptcy within a month. His assets were frozen by court order. His bank accounts, his cars, his investment properties, everything was seized as evidence or sold to pay creditors and legal fees. Lena filed for divorce, taking the baby and moving back to her parents' house 3 states away. Sophie, now older and wiser, posted a long statement on social media about being manipulated by Ryan years ago, apologizing to me publicly for her part in the betrayal. Our parents finally saw the truth. My mother called me, sobbing, apologizing for years of favoritism and willful blindness. My father met me for coffee and handed me a check, his attempt to make things right financially, though we both knew money couldn't repair years of emotional damage. But the moment that mattered most came when Ryan called me from an unknown number, his voice broken and hollow. "You destroyed me," he said quietly. "Are you proud of what you've done?" I thought about his question for a long time before answering. "You destroyed yourself, Ryan. I just made sure everyone else could finally see it." Then I hung up. Months passed. The seasons changed from summer to fall to winter. Ryan lost absolutely everything: his business, his reputation, his family, his freedom. He pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and forgery to avoid a longer trial, receiving a sentence of 4 years in federal prison. I, on the other hand, had been quietly rebuilding my life. Using the evidence I'd gathered about Ryan's clients, I approached them one by one with a proposal: legitimate construction services, transparent pricing, quality work, ethical business practices. Everything Ryan's company had pretended to be. They trusted me because I'd been the whistleblower, the honest brother who'd exposed corruption at great personal cost. One by one, they signed contracts with my new company. I hired Maya as my operations director and second in command. She was brilliant, ethical, and shared my vision of building something good from the ashes of Ryan's empire. Within a year, my company had absorbed most of Ryan's old contracts and clients. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was genuinely thriving, building something real and sustainable. Then one Tuesday afternoon, Maya sent me a text message that made me smile for the first time in months. "Ryan's selling his house. The one your grandfather built. Do you want it?" I stared at that message, thinking about the layers of irony about justice coming full circle. I replied immediately, "Yes, buy it anonymously through a shell company." Some things were too perfect to pass up. Through a carefully structured shell company that couldn't be traced back to me, I purchased the house where Ryan and I had grown up. The house our grandfather had built with his own hands over the course of 2 years. The house that held every childhood memory, every family holiday, every moment before everything fell apart. Ryan sold it to escape crushing debt, to pay lawyers, to salvage whatever he could from his collapsed life. He never knew I was the buyer. The transaction was handled entirely through lawyers and anonymous corporate entities. On move-in day, I walked through the front door carrying boxes of my belongings, breathing in the familiar smell of old wood and memories. The walls still had marks where we'd measured our heights as children. The kitchen counter still had the small burn mark from when Ryan had tried to make pancakes at age 12. I stood in the living room where we'd celebrated Christmases, where our grandfather had taught us to play chess, where Ryan had once been my hero instead of my destroyer. Now it was mine again, completely, legally, rightfully mine. That evening, as I was unpacking in the kitchen, someone knocked firmly on the front door. I opened it to find Ryan standing there, looking gaunt and exhausted, dressed in cheap clothes that hung loosely on his thin frame. He stared at me in complete disbelief. "This is your house now," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I nodded calmly. "Welcome home," I said. Ryan pushed past me into the house, looking around wildly like he'd entered some kind of nightmare. "You bought it. You took my house. You took everything." I closed the door quietly behind him. "Your house," I repeated calmly. "This was grandfather's house. The house you stole from our family using a forged will. The house built with inheritance money that was half mine. I just bought back what you took illegally." He stumbled to the couch, collapsing onto it, his head falling into his hands. "I've lost everything. My business, my family, my money, my reputation. I have nothing left, nothing." I sat down across from him in grandfather's old chair, watching him without emotion. 10 years ago, I would have felt pity. 5 years ago, I would have felt satisfaction. Now I felt only the quiet weight of completed justice. "You had everything, Ryan," I said softly. "Two families, two children, a successful business built on my stolen inheritance. Respect, trust, love. And you threw it all away because you couldn't stop taking what didn't belong to you." He looked up at me with red, desperate eyes. "I'm your brother. Doesn't that mean anything anymore?" I thought about his question carefully, wanting to answer honestly. "It used to," I replied. "It meant everything to me. Before you slept with Sophie, before you stole my inheritance, before you seduced Lena, before you destroyed my life twice and then acted like I was the problem for being hurt." Ryan began begging. He cried real tears, his voice breaking with desperation. He promised he'd change, that prison had taught him lessons, that he'd spend the rest of his life making amends if I'd just give him another chance. He talked about family, about forgiveness, about the brotherhood we'd once shared. But I'd heard these words before. After Sophie, he'd promised he'd changed. Before Lena, he'd promised he'd become a better person. His promises were empty air, meaningless sounds designed to manipulate. "You lost what was never yours," I said finally, standing up and walking to the door. "The money, the house, the respect, the trust. It was all built on lies and theft, and lies always collapse eventually. You just happened to build yours very high, so the fall was very long." He stood too, his movements desperate and uncoordinated. "So what now? You just watch me suffer? Is that your revenge?" I opened the front door, cold evening air flowing into the warm house. "No, Ryan. I'm going to live my life. You're going to live yours. And we're going to do it completely separately forever." He lingered in the doorway, looking small and broken, nothing like the confident golden child who destroyed my marriages. Then, without another word, he walked out into the darkness. I watched him disappear down the driveway, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt the crushing weight lift completely off my chest. He was gone. Truly, finally, permanently gone. And I was free. A year later, I stood in the backyard of my grandfather's house, now completely restored and renovated. The garden was blooming with flowers my grandfather had planted decades ago. The porch had been rebuilt exactly as he designed it. The house felt alive again, filled with good memories instead of painful ones. Maya stopped by regularly with coffee and business updates. Our company had just landed the biggest contract in its history, a massive city development project that Ryan had once dreamed of winning. My father visited occasionally, and slowly, carefully, we were rebuilding our relationship on new terms, with clear boundaries and honest communication. As for Ryan's children, the two boys who existed because of betrayal, I set up trust funds for both of them. They hadn't asked to be born into this mess, and they deserved better than the legacy their father had left them. Education funds, healthcare coverage, everything they'd need for a good start in life. I wasn't cruel. I was just finished with revenge. People sometimes ask me if I regretted how I'd handled everything, if the revenge had been worth the effort. But I never saw it as revenge. I saw it as reclaiming my dignity. Ryan had taken my wives, my family, my peace, my money, my trust. But he couldn't take my strength or my ability to rebuild. And that strength ultimately was what destroyed him. I closed the door on my past and walked into my future. Not bitter, not broken, just free. Finally, completely, eternally free.